The wind howled like a wounded animal, dragging sheets of snow across the forest floor. Beneath the frozen silence, branches snapped under the weight of ice, and the trees stood like sentinels in mourning. I moved through the gloom with practiced steps, breath fogging the air as I pulled my cloak tighter around my shoulders. I hadn't planned to venture out this far, but something had drawn me deeper into the woods that morning, an instinct I'd learned never to ignore. It was in the hollow of a snow-covered clearing that I saw her. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, a pale figure, barely a ripple in the frost. But then she stirred, a small movement, subtle as a heartbeat, and I knew. A child, no older than 5, curled in on herself, her white blonde hair tangled and strewn with ice. Her skin was pale as porcelain, and she wore a thin, sleeveless dress of soft pink silk that clung to her like frost on glass. She was barefoot. I knelt beside her, careful not to startle her, though she seemed beyond fear, or pain, or even awareness. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, like a bird teetering on the edge of sleep and death. She had pointed ears. Elven. I hesitated. Elves didn't belong in this part of the world, and certainly not alone in human territory. It was forbidden, dangerous, for them and for us. But law and logic meant little against the sharp cry of survival. I slipped my arms under her fragile frame. She weighed almost nothing, like lifting a bundle of snow. She didn't resist. My cabin was a mile back through the trees, a hidden shelter built more for solitude than comfort. The trek was punishing, with the storm growing in intensity, but I moved faster than I should have been able to, clutching her close to my chest, as though my body heat alone could keep her tethered to life. Inside, I laid her by the hearth and built a fire so hot the stones hissed. I stripped off her wet clothes, wrapping her in thick wool and layers of fur. Her skin, up close, was marked faintly with silver veins that glowed when the firelight touched them. I had never seen anything like it. She didn't speak. Not that day, nor the next. Only silence and wide, violet eyes that watched me with neither trust nor fear, just ancient, unfathomable stillness. I gave her a name, for my own sake, Lyra. I kept her warm, fed her in small spoonfuls, and coaxed her to drink honey water. Gradually, her cheeks began to pink in. Her eyes stayed sharp. She didn't cry, or laugh, or murmur in sleep. She simply existed, like a moon trapped in snow. Days passed in rhythm. I chopped wood. She watched. I cooked. She listened. I spoke aloud, narrating everything I did, not expecting a reply. She followed me from room to room like a silent shadow. When I went to the river to break the ice and fish, she stood on the bank and stared into the current as though it whispered secrets only she could understand. I tried to imagine where she came from. An elven stronghold hidden in the forest? A royal caravan caught in the storm? But there was no sign of struggle, no footprints, no blood. Just her, alone, as though the snow itself had given birth to her. It was the 4th night when I found her standing at the window. The firelight silhouetted her small frame, and her breath clouded the glass. She had drawn something with her finger, a symbol that vanished as soon as I approached. When I asked her about it, she blinked once and walked away. She never smiled. That night, I dreamed. In the dream, a woman stood beneath the moon, robed in black, her long hair flowing like ink through water. Her face was hidden, but her voice rang clear in my mind. Keep her warm. The cold remembers. I woke sweating, heart hammering. Lyra was asleep on the rug beside the fire, her hand resting on a carved wooden bear I had given her. She looked peaceful, but something had changed. A scent in the air, like distant rain on ash. I checked the locks, lit candles in every room. By the next morning, the forest had changed. Tracks surrounded the cabin, not human, not animal. Clawed, deep impressions that circled without pattern. I'd lived here 7 winters and never seen prints like those. They didn't belong to any creature I knew. Lyra stood at the threshold when I returned, her eyes fixed on the trees. I crouched beside her. Do you know what's out there? She didn't speak, but she nodded. That was the first time I felt true fear. Not for myself, but for her. Over the following days, she began to engage in subtle ways. She placed sticks in spirals around the cabin. She stacked stones beside the door in perfect symmetry. When I tried to move them, she frowned, gently but firmly restoring them to their precise positions. I let her be. One evening, As I stirred the stew, she spoke. One word. Mother. Her voice was soft, high and lilting like birdsong through snowdrifts. I turned, stunned. She was staring into the fire. Where is your mother, Lyra? I asked. She didn't answer, but she repeated the word again the next morning when she awoke from a dream. And again that night, while staring into the dark woods. Mother. It was both a plea and a promise. Then, as the full moon crested above the trees, I saw her. A figure standing at the forest's edge. Tall, pale, draped in flowing black. Long silver blonde hair rippling like liquid moonlight. She didn't move, just watched us from beyond the ring of firelight. Lyra stood, eyes wide, lips parted in wonder. Her fingers found mine. The woman raised a hand in greeting. And in warning. The cold wind surged, dousing the torches I'd lit around the cabin. Darkness folded in like wings. When the flames returned, the figure was gone. Lyra looked up at me. She's coming back. I didn't ask who. I already knew. The girl I'd rescued from the snow wasn't lost. She'd been hidden, and now the snow was remembering. The next morning brought a hush to the world outside, a silence too absolute to be natural. Even the usual rustling of wind through pine was absent, replaced by a dense, expectant stillness. The kind of quiet that presses against your ribs and makes your breath feel too loud. Lyra didn't speak again for 3 days. She moved with slow deliberation, watching the trees from every window. She no longer seemed like a child. The way she held herself, the patience with which she listened, the calmness in her gaze. It belonged to something older, something ancient housed in a fragile, small body. At times, I caught her whispering words in a language I didn't recognize, touching her fingers to the walls as if searching for seams between this world and another. On the 4th day, the forest breathed. I felt it before I heard anything. A pulse in the ground, subtle as a heartbeat, echoing through the earth and into the soles of my boots. Then the crows took flight, startled into chaotic spirals above the canopy. And then, she arrived. I had no warning, no fanfare, just a presence, sudden and commanding. I turned from the woodpile to find her standing in the clearing. She was taller than any elf I'd ever seen, dressed in layers of onyx black silk that shimmered like oil beneath the pale sky. Her hair flowed to her waist, silver gold like sunlight on snow, and her ears tapered sharply, more pronounced than Lyra's. Her eyes, gods, her eyes, were a shade of amethyst so dark they nearly looked black, framed by long lashes and a gaze that could silence thunder. She walked toward me without hesitation, each step measured and silent, her boots not disturbing even the lightest snow. When she reached the edge of the porch, she stopped. She didn't knock. She didn't need to. Lyra opened the door from inside. For a breathless second, the two stared at each other. The woman didn't smile, didn't speak. Her hand reached out, palm upward. Lyra crossed the threshold and placed her small fingers into the waiting hand. The gesture was final. A reunion long delayed, now complete. You kept her warm, the woman said, her voice velvet and ice, rich with layers I couldn't parse. You've done more than most would dare. I found her in the snow. I replied, voice hoarse. She would have died. She would have returned, she corrected. But not the same. The snow takes what it touches. You held it back. She studied me, and in that gaze I felt laid bare. Every memory, every scar, every quiet ache I'd buried in this wilderness. There was no hiding from her. No pretense. Who are you? I asked. Her fingers tightened around Lyra's hand. I am her mother. My name does not belong in this tongue, but you may call me Alaris. I glanced at the child. Lyra stood still, face unreadable, her free hand tucked behind her back. What is she? I said. She's not just a child. Alaris tilted her head slightly, as if considering how much to reveal. She is a vessel, she said at last, born to bridge what has been severed, a bearer of memory, of warning. Warning, I echoed. The cold you fought was not weather, she said. It was searching, not for you, for her. I felt the weight of her words settle like a stone in my chest. My mind reeled, reaching for explanations, anchors, sense. You hid her. From something. Alaris gave a small nod. From something ancient and awakening. She was left near death because only in that moment would she pass unseen. You interfered. You changed her path. I saved her. Yes, she agreed. And now you are part of the message. The door behind me creaked as the wind stirred again. Alaris stepped forward, lifting her hand. A symbol, glowing, intricate, appeared in the air between us, hovering like frost suspended in sunlight. "She has been touched by the old frost," she said. "And now so have you. It leaves a mark, not visible, but permanent. When the snow returns, it will remember who defied it." "What do you want from me?" "Nothing more," she replied. "You've done what needed doing. But the world is not finished with you." She looked down at Lyra, brushing a lock of hair from her cheek. "She is still learning to carry what she is. One day, she will be hunted for it." My jaw tightened. "Then she'll need someone to protect her." Alaris turned her gaze back to me. There was no softness in her face, no warmth, but there was respect, the kind reserved for those who'd done the unthinkable and survived. "You already have," she said, "and you will again, though you won't remember this." Before I could ask what she meant, Lyra stepped forward. She reached into her dress pocket and drew out a small wooden bear, the one I had carved for her. She pressed it into my hand, and her small fingers closed around mine. "You kept me warm," she whispered. A sound caught in my throat. "You're not going to forget, are you?" She shook her head. "I remember everything." I didn't feel the spell take hold. One moment I was looking into her violet eyes, and the next, the snow was falling quietly again, and I was alone on the porch. No tracks, no figures, no sound beyond the hush of wind in the trees. The door behind me creaked open. I turned. The fire was still burning inside. Everything was in its place, except her. The bear was still in my hand. I stared at it, confused. My thoughts blurred at the edges, as if a fog had crept into my memory. I knew I had found someone, helped someone. A child? A woman? The details danced just beyond my grasp. But the warmth in my chest, the strange ache of something lost but not gone, that remained. So I sat by the hearth that night, holding the bear, and waited for the snow to whisper again. The days passed, indistinct and cold, like smoke drifting through frost-bitten air. I tended the fire. I hunted when I remembered to. I repaired the roof where the snow had clawed at the edges. But nothing felt rooted. My thoughts frayed easily, memories slipping like thawed ice between fingers. Yet the wooden bear remained, sitting atop the mantle where I'd placed it the night the snow returned. I couldn't remember why it mattered, only that it did. Dreams began to haunt me, vivid, sharp-edged visions that cut deeper than reality. A little girl, pale-haired and barefoot, standing in snow with eyes full of stars. A woman cloaked in midnight, speaking without words. The forest screaming without sound. I awoke often with my hands trembling. Then came the night of the frost moon. It arrived with no warning, a silvery disk veiled by mist, casting a cold luminance over the treetops. I stood outside the cabin, drawn by a pressure in the air, a sensation like breath held too long. The forest was deathly still. Then I saw it. Not a figure, not a beast. Something older. A shape in the trees, shifting in ways it should not, like shadows turning inside out. It watched me, not with eyes, but with awareness. A sentience that pressed against my mind, seeking, testing. I stumbled backward, slamming the cabin door shut and barring it, my chest heaving as sweat gathered beneath my collar. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was looking for something. Someone. That night, the bear fell from the mantle. I picked it up with shaking hands, turning it over. My breath caught. Something had changed. On the belly, where once the wood had been smooth, was now a faint carving, an unfamiliar rune, shallow but unmistakably deliberate. I didn't remember putting it there. I didn't remember carving it at all. The dreams returned, fiercer. Lyra, yes, her name, like a candle in the fog, was standing in a field of snow, eyes glowing with ancient light. She reached toward me, mouth forming words I couldn't hear. Behind her stood her mother, Alaris, half wrapped in mist and memory, watching me with sorrow that transcended time. "You must remember," Lyra mouthed, though no sound came. "The frost is learning." I woke with blood on my tongue from biting it in my sleep. The next morning, I ventured into the woods with the bear in my pocket, driven by a force I couldn't name. Something within me demanded movement. The snow was lighter, almost reluctant in its fall. I followed no path, but my feet moved with purpose, guided by instinct rather than sight. Hours passed, or minutes. Time blurred. Then I found it. A glade unlike any I'd seen. Moss-covered stones arranged in a circle, old as the forest itself. Trees bent inward, as if leaning to listen. And in the center, a hollow. A place where the snow refused to settle. Where the air shimmered like heat, though no warmth touched my skin. I stepped into the circle. A jolt ran through me. Not pain, recognition. And suddenly, I remembered. Not all. Not fully. But enough. Lyra in my arms, her skin like ice. Her voice, small and solemn. You kept me warm. The snowstorm. The symbols. Her mother's voice echoing. The cold remembers. I fell to my knees. The bear in my hand pulsed with heat. I set it down in the center of the glade. The rune flared. And then they came. First, the cold. It swept in like a living tide, the kind of cold that speaks in your bones. Then the presence, a rift in the air, a wound in reality. From it, they stepped through. Elves, not like the ones from legend, but solemn, silent sentinels. Their armor gleamed like black glass. And behind them, Ilaris. She was as I remembered, regal, eternal. But now there was weariness in her bearing and blood on her hands. She stepped forward. You broke the seal. I didn't mean to, I whispered. You were meant to. It was the only way. From behind her, Lyra emerged. Her face had changed, older, sharper. But her eyes were the same. That unending calm. That deep, knowing sorrow. She approached and knelt beside me. You held the memory, she said softly. Even when they tried to take it. I didn't even know what I was holding, I said. You did. Deep down. The cold could not claim you. Ilaris joined us, her gaze distant. It has begun, she said. The frost stirs again. It was never just a storm. It was a trial. A first breath. Now it seeks to awaken fully. And you, human, have been marked. Why me? I asked. I was no one. A hermit in the woods. You were alone, she said. Unafraid. And kind. That is rarer than magic. Lyra reached out and touched my heart. You will come with us, she said. There's more you must remember. More we must face. And just like that, the snow lifted. The glade dissolved into light. The cold fell away. And I stepped into the unknown, no longer lost, but chosen.